It reminds me of my favorite cartoon about giving. It shows two clergy standing outside church right after the service. They're waiting for everyone to come out. And one turns to the other and says, "That's the best sermon on giving I've ever heard." And they're both standing there in their underwear. I really like that. Now, the problem with today's gospel and this sentence from Jesus, "Render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's," it's so familiar. We think we really get it. We don't need to spend a whole lot of time working on this, but I think there is a way to look at this that helps you see it in a new way. Because I'm going to suggest to you there's a way to hear this in a new way. Two friends were walking near Times Square in Manhattan one day. It was during the noon hour, and the streets were filled with lots and lots of people. If you've ever been there, it is just a mass of humanity. There are cars honking their horns. Taxi cabs are squealing around the corners. Sirens are wailing. I mean, the sound of New York, you're in it. And it's all around you, and it seems to be going through you. It can be absolutely deafening. And one of them turns to the other and says, "Wow, what an interesting place to hear a cricket." And everyone stops and looks at it. What? What are you talking about? You couldn't possibly hear a cricket in the middle of all this racket. The other one says, "No, I'm sure that I just heard a cricket." "That's insane," his friend says. Well, the one who thought he heard a cricket listened carefully for a moment, and then he somehow managed to get across the street, and there was this great big concrete planter with these shrubs in it. And the guy started looking carefully and listening, and finally he showed his friend on a branch. There was a little cricket in there about an inch long. And his friend was absolutely stunned. He said, "That's incredible. You must have Are you Superman? You must have super hearing. How'd you do that?" Well, the man said, "No, my ears are no different from yours. It depends on what you're listening for." The guy said, "Oh no, that just can't be right. I could never hear a cricket in all this noise." "Well, that's true. That's probably true," the guy said, "but it depends on what's really important to you. Let me show you what I mean." And he reaches into his pocket, and he pulls out a handful of change and drops the whole handful. And it all hits the concrete sidewalk. And everyone within 20 to 30 feet stops and looks. See what I mean? See what I mean? It all depends on what you're listening for. Even though the middle of Manhattan, all these people, all these cars, sirens wailing, people hear the sound of money hitting the concrete. It all depends on what's important to you. That's what you tend to hear. And in the end, the Pharisees hear from Jesus what they were looking for, what they were listening for. The Pharisees went and took counsel how to entangle him in his talk. That was the goal. They wanted to catch him saying the wrong thing. The wrong thing. But how does it begin? "Teacher, we know that you are true, and teach the way of God truthfully. You care for no man, for you do not regard the position of men. Tell us then what you think. Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not?" But Jesus is aware of their malice. That's what the text says. He is aware of their malice. "Why do you put me to the test, you hypocrites? Because this is a man who can see into their souls. He sees through their compliments, he sees through their tricks, and he answers them." Now let me give you some background on this tax question. In an election, in the time of elections, we're hearing lots about who's going to raise taxes and who isn't. But in the ancient world, taxes were also important. It was a very political question that that the Pharisees were asking Jesus, and also a very tricky question because it got theology all tangled up in it. The tax that the Pharisees are talking about was a poll tax. And it was levied by the Romans against the Jews in about 6 A.D. And almost immediately, it provoked the rebellion of Judas the Galilean. And this is mentioned in Acts 5:37. Now, there are lots of political parties in ancient Jerusalem, and one of them was called the Herodians. They favored the tax. But another party called the Zealots and the Pharisees, and most of the people highly resented it. The Pharisees and the Herodians found themselves in a common alliance in this one instance in their desire to trap Jesus and his words. Now, the question is, should the authority of Caesar be recognized and the poll tax be paid to him? Now, this also gives another nuance to this is, by this time, the emperor is expecting everyone to worship him. We haven't had a president like that yet, but hang on.